Welcome to a close reading of John Donne's A Nocturnal upon St. Lucy's Day, being the shortest day of the year. A friend of the channel has requested this, and since today is St. Lucy's Day, December 13th, I thought it would be appropriate to study this one for the day. Now, this is a poem about the winter solstice, about the shortest day of the year, which St. Lucy's Day fell on back in Donne's time. On the Julian calendar, which was adopted in the late 1500s, St. Lucy's Day actually fell nearer to the winter solstice. Today, the winter solstice, now that we're on the Gregorian calendar, it falls on December 21st. And England was a little late to adopt the Gregorian calendar for various reasons, so that's why there's that discrepancy there between the 13th of December and the actual winter solstice. But during Donne's time, when he was writing this, St. Lucy's Day, December 13th, actually fell on a day very near the winter solstice. So this is a poem that has the winter solstice as its setting, and we'll see Donne using characteristic imagery and metaphors to describe, to use this setting as a way to talk about a spiritual reality and a way to provide a vocabulary for what's going on inside. It's a poem partly about grief. It's called a Nocturnal, which harkens back to the Nocturne, a liturgical night prayer. C.H. Miller, a Donne scholar, speculates that this poem is structured after the Nocturne, the religious Nocturne, which has 5 parts, and you'll notice that this poem has 5 stanzas. C.H. Miller also noted that nocturnes had 9 psalms and 9 lessons, and you'll see that each stanza has 9 lines. So it's suggestive that Donne borrowed this liturgical form as a way to structure his nocturne. So let's begin by reading the first stanza. "'Tis the year's midnight, and it is the day's, Lucy's, who scarce 7 hours herself unmasks. The sun is spent, and now his flasks send forth light squibs, no constant rays. The world's whole sap is sunk, the general balm the hydroptic earth hath drunk. Whither, as to the bed's feet, life is shrunk, dead and interred. Yet all these seem to laugh, compared with me, who am their epitaph." Let's begin with the first line, which slows us down. You'll notice he uses the shortening of it is to tis. "'Tis the year's midnight, and it is the day." You have to ask, why did he spell it out here when he didn't here? Partly, metrically, the way it sounds, but also to slow us down. This is not Donne writing the good morrow or the sun rising. This is a very different dramatic voice that Donne is employing here because he's in a different state. "'Tis the year's midnight, and it is the day's midnight, Lucy's day." And we have this slow revision here going on at the beginning of the next line. It's Lucy's day, who scarce 7 hours herself unmasks. Donne is saying that the day is so short that it scarcely was 7 hours long. This metaphor of unmasking the day, unmasking to the earth. The sun is spent. This condition of the sun having gone down, the day is spent, the day being short, is very key, and it's setting up the spiritual reality that Donne will soon, or that the speaker will soon introduce. "And now his flasks send forth light squibs." This is where very, very quickly we as contemporary readers are at a loss sometimes with the vocabulary. Flasks, so were chemical containers often carrying gunpowder, and that's certainly what's being evoked here. Flasks of gunpowder which send forth light squibs. Squibs, by the way, were like fireworks, okay, which were made of gunpowder. So you're thinking gunpowder flasks, maybe we're in the world of war and military. But predominantly the metaphor will be alchemic. And notice the sounds. "And now his flasks send forth light squibs, no constant rays." Again, setting it up. See how meditative this is? And it's different for Donne. He does have a few poems like this, but he's setting the scene very slowly, meditatively. And the scene itself will be unpacked and given spiritual significance. No constant rays. So instead of shining constantly, they're bursting, almost like fireworks. The world's whole sap is sunk. Sap, life juice. Another interesting metaphor introduced here. Sap connected to the balm, the general balm, the hydroptic earth hath drunk. Now, hydroptic referred to an illness, a condition of being thirsty and being unable to quench your thirst. And so a dropsic person was someone who had swollen limbs, had a lot of fluid in them, and could be thirsty but insatiable, drinking things up in a sickly manner, in a sickly condition. And this is the hydroptic earth, the earth herself being in a state of illness, hath drunk, whither as to the bed's feet life is shrunk. So we have the sun spent, no constant rays. The hydroptic earth, life is shrunk, dead and interred. Here at the beginning of this line we have that coming into the mortal, the imagery of illness coming to land in this dead and interred. Interred meaning to be buried or entombed. And we have a turn. Yet all these seem to laugh. Surprising statement. Here we have Donne's characteristic hyperbole, his exaggeration. Yet all these seem to laugh, compared with me, who am their epitaph. The speaker emerges here, pitting himself against the imagery, drastic, sickly imagery of the earth. These seem all to laugh compared to me, who am their epitaph, epitaph being an inscribed stone over a grave or a tomb. And as we're moving on into the next stanza, we have these sounds, these long E sounds, since it's introduced by me. Study me then, you who shall lovers be. You notice that long E, at the next world, that is, at the next spring. For I am every dead thing in whom love wrought new alchemy. And then here's the chief metaphor being introduced here of alchemy, and that's going to govern the diction of his parisons. So they're in the dead of winter, and he's addressing this nocturnal to those who would be lovers in the spring. For I am every dead thing in whom love wrought new alchemy meaning new transformation, hitherto undiscovered in the world of science. Something has happened to him, and love, like a chemist, has made it happen. For his art did express, that would be love, and art means skill here, so for love's skill, for his art did express a quintessence even from nothingness. Notice the sibilants haunting this. Quintessence mean essence, or the distillation, what has remained, the purified form after everything else is gone. What has love wrought upon him? This new alchemy which has reduced his identity to a quintessence from nothingness, from dull privations, lean emptiness. He ruined me again, love. And I am re-begot of absence, darkness, death, things which are not. So it's this creation ex nihilo, the creation from nothing. It's as though love can create something new out of nothing, which traditionally is something that only God can do in the Christian context in which Donne is writing. And so there might be a little bit of parody here. There also might be a deliberate semblance between love and God himself. But of course Donne is speaking here of romantic love, as we'll see. So it's interesting, this religion of love of Donne's, which borrows language from Christian orthodoxy and Christian theology and church history, and all of these doctrinal debates that are swirling around the late 16th and early 17th century. He's bringing it in, and he's developing his own language, really, renovating these old concepts into his own religion of love here. And I say Donne, I mean the speaker, the poet's persona. The speaker has been re-begotten out of absence, darkness and death, things which are not. You'll notice too the sounds that are linking these descriptions of nothingness together. It's the S sound, which is stunted here in death. Now remember, we're thinking about love the chemist. The speaker's going to introduce a comparison here. All others from all things draw all that's good. I'll untangle the sense here, but you'll notice the repetition of the sounds. all others, from all things draw all that's good. So all other chemists can distill from one substance a good substance. Life, soul, form, spirit, whence they be and have, whence they have their being, from where they get their existence. But, and here's the comparison, I, by love's limbic, am the grave of all that's nothing. A limbic was a device, 2 canisters that distilled liquid into a purer substance. Emerson, in his essay, Nature, describes art as having passed from nature through the alembic of man. And so it's an interesting metaphor that carries on in literature, and you'll see it come up. So the limbic, or alembic, is a distiller. Love has distilled the speaker into nothing, am the grave of all that's nothing. And notice the liquid imagery still continues as the speaker is looking back. Oft a flood have we two wept, and so drowned the whole world, us two. Oft did we grow to be 2 chaoses, when we did show care to aught else. Often they have wept to part, and they parted before, so he's speaking of a lover, someone he's loved, and now he's addressing this lover, it seems. Not so much the new lovers, who would love in the next world, the next spring, but instead someone he knew, and who is now no more. Oft a flood we have wept, so drowned the whole world, us two. Oft did we grow to be 2 chaoses, meaning that they became nothingness whenever they parted, or when they showed care to anything else beside themselves, beside each other, rather. This idea of the 2 chaoses could be hearkening back to the creation account in Genesis, especially the Hebrew words tohu and bohu, formlessness and void. And it seems that since this speaker is very much in void, he is emptiness, nothing out of nothing, this other chaos of the lover is without form, a formlessness. The Spirit of God made creation out of tohu and bohu, formlessness and emptiness, out of nothing. It's still within the Christian history and mythos. 2 chaoses, when we did show care to aught else, and oft absences withdrew our souls, and made us carcasses. The idea that being apart from each other took away life from the body. Now, so we know this loss has been introduced, suggested by the previous stanza. He now makes it explicit. But I am by her death, which word wrongs her, of the first nothing the elixir grown. A little syntactical complexity here. First the parenthetical. Why does this word wrong her? Because her soul lives on. But I am by her death, the elixir, or the quintessence, the substance, grown of the first nothing. So out of the first nothing he has been distilled into this elixir by her death. Again, very complicated alchemic imagery. Were I a man, that I were one, I needs must know, I should prefer, if I were any beast, some ends, some means, yea, plants, yea, stones detest, and love. All some properties invest. Again, seeking form, hearkening back to possibly the formlessness of the previous void, and all some properties invest. If I an ordinary nothing were, as shadow, a light and body must be here. So he's saying he's not merely the absence of something. The speaker is the presence of nothing. And there's a difference between the absence of something and the presence of nothing, because if it were an ordinary nothing, such as a shadow, which would indicate the presence of something else, then he would be an ordinary nothing, but he's not. He's not indicating the presence of something else, he's pure absence. He's very insistent, this speaker, upon describing this nothingness state. And that's partly why I think these stanzas are so controlled, metrically sometimes, imagistically, in a way that's different from what we've seen in other Donne poems. Now, moving on to the 5th and final stanza, but I am none, nor will my sun renew. Notice those sounds here, contrasting, linking together the concept of none and sun, who within this framework are opposites. He says, I am none. Unlike this day, my sun will not renew. You lovers, addressing the lovers again, for whose sake the lesser sun at this time to the goat is run to fetch new lust and give it you, enjoy your summer all. This is the imperative. You all enjoy your summer for the sake of the lesser sun. What is that? That's the one in the sky, who has run to the goat, an astrological sign in the Tropic of Capricorn. The image of the goat, always associated with lust, as we see with Greek mythology, the Pan and the satyrs, is the idea of the lesser sun going to the astrological sign of the goat to fetch new lust and give it to you to bring it back in the summer. But his sun will not renew. Since she enjoys her long night's festival, let me prepare towards her. Let me prepare towards her. Notice that iambic rhythm, placing the stress upon me. Prepare towards her. Let me move towards her. And let me call this hour her vigil and her eve. So both the day before and the night before, because the day was so short. Since this both the years and the day's deep midnight is. And notice how this last line echoes the first. 'Tis the year's midnight, and it is the day's Lucy's. Both the years and the day's deep midnight is. With a ronger turning back on itself here. You see how very staid and controlled this poem is. Very different from Donne's other poems, but it does move in a certain trajectory towards a resolution or application. Since she enjoys her long night's festival, her death, since she is dead, let me prepare towards her. Let me go towards her, to begin towards her. And let me call, notice that enjambment. We think maybe call, like voice to call after her, but then that sense, if you're thinking it, is corrected by this. Let me name, not call out, but let me name this hour her vigil and her eve. And coming back, since this both the years and the day's deep midnight is. So it's a complex poem. It's a poem that rewards rereading, so please do reread it. I hope you read it before you watched this video. But there's more to be said about it. There's more to be said about the sounds, about the imagery, and even about the theological and religious claims this poem seems to be making. But this will give you a handle on what the poem means, and I hope this helped. So thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time.